Hi, I'm Dr. Duffy. In this video, I want to illustrate how courage and vision have a role in overcoming depression. Students coming to the counseling center have shared with me what it feels like when they feel down. Some have told me that their friends don't know how bad they feel because they try to keep a happy face. They worry their friends would not want to be around them if they knew how they really felt. They may not consider that their friends could be like ducks who seem to move effortlessly over the water but are madly paddling underneath it. I've used what they've shared with me to piece together three hypothetical examples. I hope I've captured for you what it felt like to them and how they got out of their pickle. For Sally, it started with a vague feeling that she was slightly removed from what was going on. Things didn't seem as vivid to her. She noticed she could not get as enthusiastic about what she was doing. It seemed like little things that had always been easy to do were requiring more effort. She noticed she was not concentrating as well as she usually did. She started feeling more self-conscious and worrying more about herself. She found herself second-guessing everything she said. Ordinarily pretty self-confident, she began to doubt herself in little things. She noticed her worrying seemed to be worse at night when she was trying to go to sleep. She began to feel unrested when she got up in the morning, and it became more of an effort to get out of bed. She'd been someone who liked to exercise, but now it seemed like too much effort, like so many other things. Sally's roommate, who had known her since high school, noticed the differences in her. When Sally mentioned her dropping grades, Sally's roommate took the opportunity to suggest counseling. Sally thought it would be like everything else these days. A part of her wanted to go and a part of her wanted to please her roommate. In counseling, she was gradually able to rediscover her strengths, to change the way she looked at and thought about things, and to see ways to reach her desired future. Her therapist helped her get back into healthier patterns of study, sleep, eating, and exercise. For the life of her, Belle could not figure out why she should feel depressed. She'd been lucky enough to have a supportive family and supportive boyfriend. She had no doubts about wanting to be a teacher and had been doing fine in her classes. She had friends. She'd seen other people get worn out from worry, but she was not worried herself. She was draggy for no apparent reason. She could get to sleep, but ended up waking up too soon. It even seemed to her that her thinking was somehow a bit slower. Her boyfriend complained she didn't seem to be enjoying what they did, and he was feeling like he was doing something wrong. Her alarm about not knowing what was going on, not being able to explain it to herself, brought her to counseling. Her counselor suggested that she see me for a look into other illnesses that could be causing these symptoms. We did blood work, and her blood work showed that Belle did not have diabetes, a not infrequent cause of depression. Belle had the beginnings of iron deficiency anemia from her vegetarian diet, and she also was having heavy periods, but it was her thyroid lab work that pointed to hypothyroidism as a basis for her depressive symptoms. Correcting the thyroid corrected the depression. She also started supplementing her vegetarian diet. It was in middle school that Terrell first realized other kids were not experiencing what he was. He'd always explained it to himself as feeling forgotten by the people in his family who were too busy struggling with their own despair. He tried not to fault them for not being able to give him something they themselves never had to give. It was hard to have hope for himself when he saw no examples of people around him making it. But Terrell was bright, and his sensitive, caring nature made him a keen observer of those around him, and he wanted to somehow make a difference with his life. As a first-generation college student, he had no one to blaze the path for him. Terrell figured that some of how he felt came from things in his situation, but some seemed to come out of the blue. It felt like something was happening to him that had a life of its own. It was like something his body and his brain were doing to him that he had to cope with. It also seemed to change. It would be clearly better for a while and then get worse. It was kind of like he could keep his emotional head above water for a while, then the undertow would pull him back under, and he would struggle to keep his head above water. When he went to explain what he was experiencing to his friends, he felt like an astronaut trying to explain weightlessness to people who had never been in space to feel weightless themselves. The scariest part of it all was how it affected his thinking. He was getting to be afraid of his thoughts. From time to time, he would have a fleeting suicidal thought. It felt like it was not part of him, and he didn't want to act on it, but it scared him that he would even have the thought. At times, his brain would think unmercifully mean thoughts about him. When he felt better, he would know these thoughts were not true, but when he was in this state of mind, he had to work hard to argue with himself. When he was in his negative mindset, he had a hard time remembering that he'd found some meaning, commonality, and connectedness with others, and that there were those who loved him as much as they were able, and that these feelings of being dispirited and God-forsaken would pass with some effort and help. It was after one of these bouts of negative mindset that Terrell came to see me. He understood that it would take medication at this point, as well as his own persistence to help him get back on his feet. He also noticed that he was not making it to class more and not getting assignments completed on time. And he noticed how that was compounding his self-loathing. When I first saw Terrell, we began the complicated process of trying to decide whether Terrell had a bipolar mood disorder and he hadn't yet had an episode of mania, or whether he had a recurrent depression. We also had to determine the extent to which his depression had altered his ability to think, and whether a specific medication to help him with that was needed or not. Without medication at this point, Terrell would have been at risk for developing a feeling of frantic helplessness. This is a very dangerous feeling and requires immediate attention. While each of these students had varying degrees of distress, what they all had in common was their courage, persistence, and willingness to imagine that things could be different, even though they felt bad at present. Whether medication is involved or not, developing more courage and vision of the future will help you. The work you do in therapy will build on that courage and vision that you already have. Now, if you're experiencing frantic helplessness and you think you may act on thoughts of harming yourself or others, please seek help immediately by calling 911 or going to the emergency room at your local hospital. Or if you're in the Milledgeville area, the Rivers Edge Baldwin Crisis Services Center. Their number is 478-451-2979. You may also call the Georgia Crisis and Access Line at 800-715-4225. The Georgia College Public Safety can be reached at 477-445-4400. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thanks. Bye.